E41 Marketplace Ministries. It's all about your business, and it's all about our Father's business. It's ministry outside the box. No matter what your role is in the business world, E41 Ministries is a special place where we can walk worthy of the vocation wherewith we are called, just as Ephesians 4:1 commands us. In today's busy and frenetic world, it's a blessing to know that God has a plan to bring hope, comfort, and peace through Marketplace Ministry. The E41 Marketplace Ministry of the Fellowship, it's a kingdom-building business.
Hi, I'm Kerry Fink with E41 TV, and E41 TV is part of the E41 Marketplace Ministries, and we're part of the Fellowship Group. And E41, of course, comes from Ephesians 4:1, which is the walk worthy in the vocation according to which you're called. So what we want to do as E41 and Marketplace Ministries is help both ministries, people in ministry, and even congregants of ministries, but people who feel called to help build the kingdom, find ways that they can be effective in that. So, for example, Dave Robinson, who is really the founder and kind of the inspiration behind getting this, he's had a passion for many years to help people that are in what we would maybe erroneously call full-time ministry. But what we mean by full-time ministry is they're working at the church. That is how they pay their bills. I guess maybe is maybe a more specific way to say it. How we can help empower them to encourage and empower their congregation and the people who are part of the ministry to then, when they come into the church on Sunday, go back out into the marketplace Monday through Friday and really make an impact and help grow the church. And I mean the church, the big church, get the word out, if you will, but also to give encouragement and inspiration to those people who are maybe full-time in business, but aren't really immediately full-time ministry, but they are full-time ministry when you think about it, because they're impacting people every single day. And as we have said before, sometimes jokingly or maybe not jokingly, this is the only Jesus they ever get to see, is you in the office, or you in the factory, or you in the whatever you're called to be. So that's what we're going to talk about. And today, my guest is Gail Kiger. Thanks for joining us today. It's good to have you here.
Thank you very much. It's my privilege to be here.
Thank you. And we're actually here at the Fellowship Conference. We're in Reston, Virginia. We're on location in Reston, Virginia at the One Conference 2014, which is a gathering of the Fellowship. And the Fellowship is people, ministries, and people from literally all over the world. And we're just having a great time with all the different events and things that are going on. Great ministry, great speakers, great education, just great word, I would say, overall.
It's very inspiring.
And yesterday, you were at a session that Dave Robinson headed up, which was a breakout session specifically geared towards E41 Marketplace Ministry. Now, but just before, I'm just curious, from before the session, were you really familiar with that part of that aspect of the ministry, or was that a new?
I was probably a little bit more aware because I know Dave.
Sure.
And I know his heart. Mm-hmm. And it has always been in my life, but I never had that label on it. So that part's new, yes. You know,
it's like the story that we were talking about yesterday in the session, that when I first met Dave, and this is going back, many years also, he was actually working in the mission field. We were having that discussion about how he works with, at the time, missions all over the world, and they all have the same need. How do we fund what we're trying to accomplish for the kingdom? And I think even then, although he hadn't formulated the tag for E41 or really spotlighted it as that, it was still the same concept. How do we use the people in the marketplace, or how do we address the people in the marketplace to really bring the word of God to them? And especially as he quoted the statistic, if you remember, he said only 1 in 5 people are going to church in America, but 9 out of 10 people in the marketplace. So if we're interested in the mission field, this is the perfect mission field.
Yes.
So one of the things, as we were talking about, was to get, really, you had a kind of a fascinating background, because you spent really your entire career in banking and have a whole expertise in that, which is quite a secular, normally would be a secular job. But at the same time, you've also been a committed Christian and really doing all you can on that front. So let me give you just a moment to just tell me a little bit about your background and all of that.
I have been in banking for a little over 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
I started out just as a part-time teller when my youngest one went to first grade. Then it became full-time. Then I kept staying in the business, as you just life happens. Went into management. Also licensed banker to do the fixed annuities, insurance, and just branched out into different aspects of it. But every day I would be at church and participate in music and church activities, Sunday school, things like that. But that's only 1 or 2 days of your life, and only for a few hours. And the rest of your life, every day you get up and go to work, and you are at work longer and usually are with your family or friends most days of your life. So I had to personally know that I was accomplishing something as a Christian and not just as a wife and a mother and making a living. And I did that by saying, God, okay, today I'm going to be in the bank, but I want to be able to speak about you or just live my life so people see Jesus in me. And that's how it starts.
You know, it's amazing when you talk about that. You said something that's so key to the whole thing. You said so many of my hours are outside of the church, just by definition.
Yes.
One of the things that when you add that part of it up and you say how many hours you spend, Dave talks about that there's 3 places that people spend most of their time. You know, one would be in the workplace, in other words, where they're earning their living and what their vocation is that they're called for. But similarly, he also makes a distinction that there are people in government that they're charged with making the rules and the regulations and things that keep us safe, keep us protected, and that part of it. And then there's another dimension, those people who are in the education world, because they're learning about the things that they need to do, maybe either in government or business. And so he's like, this is where the bulk of people's time are. And obviously, you know, I don't think any place in the Bible it says we're supposed to just have Jesus for, 1 hour on Sunday morning or 2 hours on Sunday morning and maybe a little bit Wednesday night. I think the idea is supposed to be.
We are to practice his presence every minute of our life.
Absolutely. And so one of the things in particular, when you were explaining about your background in banking, I thought, well, this is an interesting thing because a lot of times Christians get afraid of where, there's strength in numbers. So we're in there, we're on, in fact, our pastor jokingly says, don't get in my way on Sunday. I need my medicine because I got to go out in the world Monday through Friday. You don't want me Monday through Friday if I didn't get my medicine on Sunday. And he's sort of joking, but he's not joking because you go out on Monday and you go into the world, and I've heard other people say, I don't want to lose my testimony by Tuesday, but you're dealing with a lot of situations, a lot of people with a lot of issues. They don't necessarily see the world the way you do. How do you survive and thrive and be effective in that kind of an environment?
Different ways, but it boils down to, I always looked at my job as it's sales and service, because in a bank, there are products people need, checking accounts, savings accounts, CDs, they need loans, they need investment, they need all these things. These are all material, but it's what makes your life go round.
Right.
And today, let me throw this in. The push is huge if you've ever made a call to anything on customer service.
Sure.
Like, how was my customer service?
Sure.
They say that before they even say, what do you need? Almost that important now. So I feel like when they're coming in and they have a need, whatever it is, that's the material need, but they're a whole person, and I have more of what they need than they know.
Right.
So I can give the best customer service if I take care of whatever they came to get, or whatever service they came to have provided. But then if I reach out and touch them spiritually, that's what life is really all about.
You know, we were talking to a gentleman who runs an accounting firm. He's also in full-time ministry, and he was talking about the fact that, you know, many of his clients, you know, they come in off the street, they need accounting services. Doesn't necessarily mean they're Christian. You know, he's like, I have Muslim, Hindu, you name it, and people who aren't sure what they think, you know. Yes. So, and I'm sure the same happened in the banking business. It's not really, you know, it's not really people come in with a badge that says, "Hi, I'm a Christian." You know, let's talk about that. How would you walk into a conversation, or how would you approach your Christianity with somebody? Because I know you explained before that you've had opportunities to pray with people and things like that. But talk a little bit about how you discern where it was right to move and not to move and things like that.
You have to really have your mind. You have to intentionally know where you want to go with it. Mm-hmm. You may not know what you're going to talk about or what you're going to say to them, but you have to know, I want to, at some point, if I can, minister to them. Mm-hmm. So you see what they need, and of course you do your job first because you're on the job.
Sure.
You do it, and you do it to the best of your ability. God says to do everything that we do to the best of our ability. So you give them that great customer service as much as you can. But in the meantime, they're there for a reason, and there's a reason behind the reason. They might be there to make a deposit, do a withdrawal, get a loan, whatever. But there's a life event that's driving that transaction. So if you are just pleasant, I say listen. Everybody says listen. But you listen, and then I say listen a second time. And what I mean by that, they'll talk about their kids. They'll talk about vacation, wedding. Or if they're coming in for something serious, change names because of a death. They've got some major stuff going on in their life. So you listen. And then what I learned, a little trick was, once you've listened, you still sit there and pause. It only takes 5 seconds, 10 seconds. And they'll usually come back with an explanation. Whereas if you had jumped in, you would have missed everything. And then they'll start talking about, I have these problems. They just do. Don't be afraid to listen, and don't be afraid to maybe ask one more question. And that starts the ball rolling. And they'll sit at your desk, whereas at first they'll say, how long will this take? It'll take a minute. But they stay there 10 or 15 minutes because now they've got their real problems, and you're trying to give them answers and God's answers, what they were intended to get. But you listen for hints. And one thing I think is the most important is, do not be afraid to speak. What's the worst that'll happen if you speak? They'll say, no, I'm not interested. I've never had anybody leave my desk or even leave the bank or any. They always come back, or they'll say, oh, yes. They'll be glad you asked. They'll be glad you took time to be concerned.
Sure.
And it just takes, if it's a very serious, like one-liners will start it. Like, do you have a good people around you? Do you have family around you? Support around you? If it's something, serious, like medical or death or loss of a job. And some of them will just sob, Or you could say, do you believe in prayer? Oh, yes. Or they'll even start the confession like, oh, I went to church when I was little. I haven't been there in years.
Right.
And then it's not about church.
Right.
And then you can explain, you can pray right now, wherever you are, and God will listen and he will hear. That's all he wants from you. It's not that you have to go to church and go through a form and a religion. And then if they want prayer, and sometimes I would even walk them to their car and pray, because then they don't feel like everybody's looking at them. So I would say, don't be afraid. And just a one-liner to get a hint of what they need and where they're going.
And, we were talking about, even the Bible is clear that it is a whosoever will. So the best we could ever hope for is to make sure they get the message, and it's not up to us. We just have to try to sow the seed. But we're talking about this, we've got generations now, particularly in this country, where it's not allowed to pray in school. And so when we jokingly say, you may be the first Jesus they see, it's really amazing, because it seems like people fall perhaps oftentimes into a category of either they just didn't know. We were talking with one lady who ministers to inner city situations, and she goes, people think it's a drug problem. It's really a hope problem. People don't have hope, so they're looking for Band-Aids or anesthesia or something to numb the pain. Whereas if they ever got a glimpse of who God really intended for them to be, and the hope that they really is available to them, everything shifts in a whole different way. But the same thing happens to people that don't necessarily have that or haven't had that opportunity to be exposed to that. So you may be running into people that are coming into your bank who either have never had that opportunity to have somebody talk to them about Jesus, or perhaps have had a situation that's really frosted them about the church or something like that.
A lot of bitterness. And sometimes the harshest, sharpest people, if you will be nice and be kind and show them compassion, all of a sudden you find out what their problem is, because they'll tell you, and then you realize they aren't a mean person. They're just a hurt person and a bitter person.
Yeah, it was funny. I used this a little bit earlier, but I remember seeing this on a Facebook post not so long ago, and it was how there's all this give thanks to God things that float around. This wasn't necessarily even a Christian one, but it was poignant. So just remember, the person that you meet today who's being hateful, you don't know really the whole story, and just to think about that. And I think as Christians, we're often called to that, because the Bible says, Jesus says, "Here's the new commandment: love your brother as you love yourself." And that's easy for us to do, because even our pastor likes to say, it doesn't take a Christian to like a nice person.
Yes.
That's easy.
That's right.
What do you do with the hateful, nasty ones? And I'm sure in your case of working in the bank, you met all types. You met really kind people, and then you met some it's all your fault. And how do you work with people like that when they're coming at you and they're really antagonistic or attacking, and you have the maturity to understand that they're bitter over something that really probably didn't have anything to do with you, but they're just mad at their situation?
And you do the basic steps of problem solving. And number one, again, just listen to them. Most of the time people are mad because they know a problem. They may not know why. They may know why, but they want somebody to listen to. They want it fixed, but they want you to know why that happened and that it made them upset. So if you give them the listening ear and let them tell you how upset they are, then you can start, and you don't yell back.
Right.
You just listen, and then you listen again.
Right.
Second time, it'll kind of de-escalate. It'll just dissolve. And then in the end, I've even had, and I think this is conquering. I have, when they come in mad, like they're ready to do, destroy the world, and then they apologize.
Yes.
Sorry, I was so mean, but this is why. Same thing if I have a minute with, sometimes people will overdraft their account.
Yeah.
And they get fees.
Yes.
Of course, they're mad.
Yeah.
And a lot of times that listening is because of other events in their life. And that's a good time when they spill their guts and their problems.
Yeah.
And you can just offer them Jesus and a solution.
And so then now when you go through a week of this and you walk back into the church and you're meeting with friends and the people that you go to church with and your pastors and the people that are connected with that, then how do you, as a person who's been a leader in the marketplace, like you said, you've opened branches, you've closed branches, you've done everything that there is to do really in the banking world. How do you inspire, mentor, motivate people who are coming into the church to kind of like walk that same?
I would say, again, do not be afraid to just open your mouth. Be there, show concern. And I think Americans have been fooled into thinking that we can't say things in the marketplace, and that is totally not true. Sometimes there have been issues, but the times when you will not have any problems, when nobody is against it, outweigh those times. And those times are blown up when people have problems. I have never had anybody say that's against the law. Don't say that. They'll thank me. You know, if you offer prayer, they'll thank you for the prayer, and they'll listen. They may not pray with you, but if you aren't sure where they're at, you can say, thank you, God, for your plan for us, and walk through that. He gave his son that we could have eternal life. But I would say the number one thing, don't be afraid to just open your mouth and say have a one-liner ready. You know, do you believe in prayer? Do you? And that's when they'll come back and explain where they're at in their life, if you just give them the moment to do it. Don't be afraid.
If you sense somebody is open and really struggling, but you sense that they're opening and you're in that environment, how would you encourage those people that you're sort of ministering at your desk to? What would you encourage them to do as the next step? They've acknowledged, wow, I'm really in a pickle here, and I need the prayer, I need the help. What do you tell them to do next?
Sometimes we prayed at my desk. A lot of times I'd say, let's walk out, let's have a prayer.
Okay.
Because that eliminates the surrounding distractions. Sure. And then when they're by their car, they feel like they're on their own territory. Their own turf,
sure.
Pray with them. I would give them my card. Anytime you want to talk, I'm here. Call me. Call me at home. I would give my home number. Whatever. And I was in a local community. I would say, if you don't have a church, here's where I go. There's lots of good ones around. I even a few times would say, without breaking confidentiality, but because people have talked to me about their problems, tell the pastor, hey, you need a man. Please get a man to go visit this guy because he's struggling. Or the ladies this lady needs help.
Sure.
Needs help. And you just work and get help.
Sure.
Yeah, they're definitely follow up. Definitely follow up.
Would you, I'm sure as you think back through the years and the different things that you've done along the way, because this is always an interesting fact, is that you do something at a particular time and you have no idea of the wonderful eternal consequences that something like that has. I would assume that there are probably instances where you sat with somebody at a particular point where they were moving through something, and then you can look years later and say, wow, look how God worked that situation out. Look where this person is now. Look how that became a turning point. Do you have some of those?
Without giving away a lot, a gentleman came in, and you kind of know people's banking habits.
Sure.
He had to retire early because of health. A comfortable position.
Yeah.
But you can see when people are struggling with problems on different things.
Sure.
The internet, gambling, whatever.
Oh, sure.
Well, he was having a problem, and we could see the money just leaving.
Yeah.
He came in so nervous. He wanted to do another withdrawal. And I said to him, I can see you're depressed. I can see you're struggling. Let's talk about another way out of it. Meantime, his wife had no clue.
Wow.
She put it all on him financially because he'd always been the provider. And I said, you can tell me when I'm getting too personal. You give them that option.
Sure.
But I said, you need to go home, talk to your wife, tell her what your family situation is, because it's not just his, whereas he was thinking it was.
Sure.
It's her life.
Sure.
And their children's life.
Sure.
You need to go and have a heart-to-heart with her. And not what the world calls a come to Jesus meeting, but a real heart-to-heart with Jesus.
Sure.
And because he was a form of religion, I said, you don't have to go to a confession booth. You need to both pray and find out what to do. It was at the point of them losing their home.
Oh, my goodness.
Because of and it was just traps and addictions.
Mm-hmm.
I would check back. He would come in like every couple of weeks. And it worked out. Him and his wife came in, thanked me. She said he came home and we had a talk. They worked it out so they were able to sell their home to a lady that wanted a home, and she'd been in a town or whatever.
Praise the Lord.
And they traded, it worked out. It saved the family. It probably saved the marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're like happy again, happy in the community, from depression and losing everything to working out a problem. But you have to work through your problems. And I even just recently, because I've just retired, ran into her in the grocery store, and she grabbed me. She found me, and she said, "Thank you again. Everything's much better now." But you have to work through problems and meet people at their need and just listen to find out what their needs are.
You're being a light in a dark place. Well, I couldn't think of a better sort of a summary of what this is all about. We have probably just a minute or so left. Is there like a nugget of wisdom or something that you would share to somebody that's coming along that's maybe like you were, at a point where you're just walking in, you're committed, you want to do the right things? I think you said several different things about having the courage, walking in the integrity, all those different things. But if you were going to kind of like wrap it up in a package and say to somebody, this is how this worked for me, and this is maybe what I would suggest for you.
I would say, first of all, know that a lot of your time might be in the marketplace, and know that you can use that time for the glory of God, whether it's your actions all the time. And in those little moments, and you can say, "God, tug at my heart when now's the time." But do not be afraid to just open your mouth and speak one line, ask one question, and take it from there, because you'll be amazed at how it'll start to flow and how easy it'll be. But don't be afraid. Open your mouth, because I think there's a sin of not doing something as much as there is a sin of doing something wrong. Wow. So I would just say, just do it. Open your mouth. You go. Do not be afraid. The government's not going to come after you. You aren't going to have a lawsuit. Just do it.
Just be real.
Open your mouth and do it.
That's good. That's great advice. And we thank you so much, Gail, for joining us today on this. I really appreciate your time and making the time to be part of E41 TV. And thank you for taking the time to join us and be part of this and help spread the word. E41ministries.com. We're a ministry of the fellowship, and we're committed to helping you grow in the marketplace and all the things that you do. So thanks for joining us, and God bless you.